Check, check, check. Well, that was quite the catastrophe, dude. That's a good way to. That must be good luck. You know, it's like in a Jewish wedding where you like break the glass or whatever. I just spilt a whole thing of kava all over myself. You can see it here. Landed on Lindsay downstairs. Lindsay, when you're watching this podcast later, I apologize for that. Mr. Moaz himself, Big Dog Spencer. What's up, my guy?
Hey there, Blake. Thanks for having me today. I'm really excited to be here and appreciate the opportunity to get out there and just maybe have 5 or 6 people listen to me talk about how I see things out there right now, you know?
I fucking love it, dude. You're a really, really interesting guy, and I thought this conversation would do very well with our viewing, with the people who are watching, like you said, the 5 or 6 that we get each week. So I'll start. Usually I start with who are you and what do you do, but I'm going to start with how we met because I think it's a cool story. So I'm behind the bar one day, and Spencer walks in with Crystal and the dogs in tote, I believe. We had never met. And you sat down, you ordered a drink, and then you kind of leaned over the bar to me. And you said, I'm going to tell you something that you can't tell anybody else. And you said, what do you know about GME? Nothing. And you explained to me that there is something happening right now with GameStop that I would much rather own one share than none. And I've equated that first meeting to like the scene in Back to the Future when Biff Tanner has the sports almanac and he knows the future. And when you left that day, I was telling everybody like, dude, I don't know what just happened, but I think the universe just blessed me and my wife with some crazy information. And then, you know, I didn't know if I would ever see you again at that point. But since then, we've become very close friends, and you've taught me much more about GME and the MOAS of what's going on. So that being said, that's how Spencer and I know each other. Why don't I let you take over? And I like to start these with, who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me again. You know, I'm Spencer, and I have worked with stocks and bonds, investments, clients, all different types and all different types of trading. And I don't really want to talk about, you know, the names because it's just a lot of crazy things.
Understood.
We're gonna go over some things right now that you know are worth talking about. But my whole sort of adult life has been sort of hyper focused on the system. You know, what is it? What are the cogs in the wheels? How does it work? Why do citizens pay taxes? Where does money come from? What is money? And I sort of consider myself a real specialist in that. And how do you, you know, protect assets? How do you, you know, title assets correctly? And there's a lot of things that I know that a lot of people don't know. And, you know, it's like just where we are in human history, there's so much information available to you, right? Through the internet. I think the biggest thing here is that, like, nobody was ready for the internet. Really, really changed everything. And, you know, that's kind of, you know, why we're here today doing this, right?
Yeah.
But that's me. I consider myself a fair person, and I'm really passionate about free and fair markets. And I think that markets should be traded efficiently, you know, whatever it is. And as we'll talk about, there's some bad players out there right now that have basically taken a lot of control, a lot of power. And it's crazy how widespread it is. And I do believe over the next year, you're going to see some crazy things with regulations, maybe some big, you know, financial firms go under, and like crazy shifts in the market. You know, the one thing that I would start is talking about like the Fed. It's just something that like 99% of the people in this country don't understand. But you know that they're a private company. The Fed. Yeah,
Let's get this started off right.
Let's do this. By the way, this guy has the best drinks.
Oh, yeah. Come on now.
That's
We
my
appreciate
favorite.
that. Boolah, brother.
Cool.
We never try to be the best. We just want to be good at what we do, you know? But we do appreciate that very much. So the Fed, it's the central bank for the United States, and when you think about that, you think that this would be a government agency that is keeping a watchful eye on all of the gold-backed currency that we have. But
Yeah.
what you're saying is this is not a government agency.
Yeah, the Federal Reserve is basically like a private business. So the Federal Reserve is no different really to JP Morgan or Wells Fargo. And these people have so much power, and it was kind of self-appointed to them like all the way back in 1913. And I'm telling you that like most Americans don't really understand that. They think that the Fed is a government agency. You know, it's what you do. It's you give yourself a really, really boring name, and people just assume that. The other big player in this is the DTC, the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation, or Depository Trust and Clearing Company, something, DTC, and they oversee every single trade and transaction pretty much. So if you have an account at Merrill Lynch, or if you have an account at Schwab, TD Ameritrade, Robinhood, it all goes through the DTC. They're the godfather that oversee it. And then you have the Fed over here. And basically, the inflation that we're seeing right now is caused by the Fed. So these central banks, because they were not handling the money supply the right way, now everybody is, you know, getting affected by inflation, you know, so.
Which we see everywhere. I mean, as a business owner, I see it when we buy lemons or when we buy cups or when I gas up my vehicle. This is inflation, and it's often noted that wages don't rise at the same rate of inflation, and inflation has been going up for 50 years, but the amount of money that the average person makes hasn't, and which has made it almost impossible to live a sustainable life without working yourself to death.
Yeah, it's crazy times. It's a crazy system, and you know what's happening right now with inflation is that the United States is $30 trillion in debt. And you know, nobody ever talks about that. You never see it on TV. Nobody ever, you know, says, hey, by the way, America, you're $30 trillion in debt. Now, if you go around the world, a lot of the other countries are in debt. China has, you know, $7 or $8 trillion in debt. Like Europe has a ton. And basically, guys, you know, since 2008, when central banks discovered that they could print unlimited amounts of money, they call it liquidity. They've just printed crazy, crazy amounts of money around the world. It's not just the US. And, you know, the way that you battle it is by raising rates. But inflation right now is reported at 7.5% here in the United States. And the Fed is talking about raising it 0.5%. And I'm going to tell you something that's not going to do anything. They're in a really, really, really tricky space. And they basically printed crazy, crazy, crazy amounts of money. And the money that they print is there to support the markets. So if you go on to the Fed, you go to your Google, your search engine, and you just type in the Fed balance sheet, you go right to their website and you see this chart, and you go and have a look at it because they have almost $9 trillion on their balance sheet. And that $9 trillion is basically bonds and government securities and different types of securities that they've bought to put liquidity into the market, because when they buy those bonds, the price stays high, and then you don't get margin calls. And when they talk about liquidity in the market, it's like, come on, man, you guys put like $10 trillion or something into stocks. When COVID happened in March, they printed a few trillion more. And basically, we could put like the link in the comments, you know, for people to look. But like the Federal Reserve is basically out of control, and there's nothing we can do. They don't have anybody allowed to audit them. They're pretty gangster. I mean, if you go around there, you cannot get into the building, and they have like military and stuff. They only have something like $9 billion in real assets, and the debt or the money that they've printed is in the trillions. So they're one of the most over-leveraged entities probably ever in the history of the world. And the only thing really keeping it up is like the faith in the dollar. But when COVID happened, right, a lot of people stopped working. A lot of things changed. Things slowed down. We never really got through that. central banks just started printing more money. And where we are today, it's like we never really got through COVID. We never really paid for it or took a hit. And we're just in a place where a lot of these big financial firms, the Fed, they have so much skin in the game, they own so much stuff that they really, really don't want the market to drop. And, you know, GameStop is so crazy because it basically proved that the US markets are not efficient or that they're a little bit rigged, you know?
How did GameStop, how did this all come about? My understanding is, you know, from an outside perspective, I saw, I think last year, that Robinhood wasn't giving people money when this stock shot up, and people just heard about, you know, GameStop. They heard about some pirates or some vigilantes on Reddit that were, you know, it was put in the media that they were manipulating stocks, something like that. What actually happened with the beginning of GameStop, and how did that kind of come into fruition?
Yeah, I'll tell you the story. So, you know, first of all, you can buy a stock which is going long, and you can sell a stock short, which is, you know, going short. So that's selling shares you don't have. And, you know, like, most of the world doesn't really understand shorting. Like 99.9% of the world doesn't really understand it. But basically, you're buying a company with the purpose of it going down. So like some famous companies that were like shorted to the ground were Toys R Us, Blockbuster, Sears, JCPenney. It's usually like retail. And these big firms that have the ability to create synthetic shares, you know, there's speculation that they would sell way more shares of the float than exist. It would put so much selling pressure on the stock that it would go out of business. And then these shares are what called seller boxed, where they, you know, Blockbuster, Lehman Brothers, these companies still trade out there. And these stocks right now are doing crazy things sometimes after hours where they're up like 1,000%. And when you sell a stock short, you're supposed to close. You're supposed to sell it. You know, you sell it at $20, it goes to $2, and then you get out and you make $18, right? But these people, they never ever close it. And when you never ever close it, you sell it, you take the money, you put all of that money into Amazon, and it's like you're just taking retail money, redirecting where it goes, and you're just making Amazon really, really big and strong, and it's like no one else can start a business. So there's a lot of crazy things these people do. But anyway, they were really short GameStop. So they sold more of the float than exists. So if, you know, this is one share of GameStop, the broker would take this and I would like lend it to Blake, and then he would sell it. He would take the money, and he owes me this later, you know, but he sold it and he took the money. And then the same person could come to me and I could give this same share to somebody else. It's called rehypothecation. And they actually do this a lot. If you look up the term rehypothecation, where they're selling a lot of the same shares. And it's like, it all started back in like the old days when somebody bought shares in New York from somebody in Chicago. Somebody was coming over on a horse and they were like, hey, like our rider is going to be here in 3 days. We're going to sell you the shares short, so we're going to loan them to you. And then when the rider got there, they actually delivered them. And then like sort of what happened after 2008 is that like these big people that are sort of the big players, they became the regulators, they became self-regulating, and the shorting got out of control. And they basically were like, take a company like GameStop 5 years ago, right? And it was kind of dying, you know, it was like, a lot of people were going online and they didn't have a clear vision. And the CEO, this guy Sherman, wasn't that good, but it was still like a decent company, you know. And today it's a very, very different company. An absolutely amazing story. But these big institutions, they wanted it to go to zero. So you basically take a company like GameStop, it's worth like 12 billion or something, and then you sell the shares short every day. And what they were doing was they were selling these like fake synthetics, and this is sort of speculation. It's not proven yet, even though I would say there's enough evidence and I believe it. And I'll talk about Superstonk. But basically these institutions, they sold like so many shares, and GameStop went all the way down to like $4 or $5. Okay. And then when COVID happened, everybody got Robinhood, and like everybody was like sitting at home, and they got like $600 from the government. And there was this guy, Deep Value, Deep Value, the Roaring Kitty, and he was basically on Wall Street Bets, and Wall Street Bets, you used to go on there and be like, hey guys, I'm buying this. I'm gonna YOLO, I'm gonna put 50 grand into like McDonald's puts or whatever. Like people would go on there and do some crazy trade. And Deep Value went on there and he was like, this is like January of last year, he was talking about GameStop. And Blake, it was like $5 because these hedge funds, they were selling it every day. And they drove the price down, and that's what they do. And it doesn't get attractive, and they put a lot of FUD, which is like fear, uncertainty, and doubt in the media. If you look up Motley Fool is also a registered hedge fund. And a lot of these guys are in trouble right now by the Department of Justice. There's crazy change coming. So the Department of Justice, the FBI, the SEC is looking at a lot of these big institutions. And you can go and Google FBI or Department of Justice, DOJ probe into short sellers. You'll see it. And these GME people that like were sort of called crazy. Now, like, there's a lot of information on Superstonk. It's a sub on Reddit. If you guys want more information, you go to Superstonk. And anyway, like the guy, Roaring Kitty, Deep Value, he just went on there and he was like, listen, guys, this company's undervalued. He looked at it and he actually found like a really, really undervalued stock, because they were selling it every day. And he put like 50 grand into it or something over like a few transactions over a year, whatever, something like that. And it was worth like $50 million at the top or something. So he was one of the greatest investors ever. But what happened was these guys turned off the buy button. There were a lot of people online that were basically like following him. He was a legend. And I was not there at the beginning. I was not on Wall Street Bets. I didn't know what that was. I was on Reddit, but I'm kind of very independent. I always did my own research and stuff. And basically, I remember GameStop going crazy, and I was looking at it, and it was going crazy. And I bought like a couple of shares or something, and then the buy button got cut off, and then it went all the way down to like 40, and I started buying it there. So I do own it, and DRS, just disclosure, so I'm biased. But it was crazy because the stock went from like $5 to like 480. Remember, Roaring Kitty put like 50K into it. It was worth like 50 million. Yeah. So if you put like $1,000 into it and it went to 480, even at $1,000 at 5 to 480, you made like 50 grand or something, right? You made like really crazy money. And the market cut these kids off, dude. The market turned off the buy button and they messed up all of these kids. All of these kids and these apes were on Robinhood because Robinhood was just the app of choice. And that was like the sketchiest app. And just, what you got to understand about markets is the market, and you're not going to ever be able to beat it. Like if people don't want to drink tea anymore, you're not going to sell tea. If people just don't want to drive gas cars anymore, you're not going to sell gas cars, right? And everybody loved GameStop because Ryan Cohen overtook the company. And Ryan Cohen started Chewy, Chewy.com?
Yeah, is that the pet delivery?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
He's like 36, 37. This guy is so cool. And basically, he sold Chewy for like $3 billion, which he started on his own because he noticed sort of a niche market that was missing in the pet food space. And he's so cool. Like he's 36 or 37 and he like does these awesome tweets and he's just very different to any sort of CEO out there. He's not Bill Gates. He's not Jeff Bezos. This guy is like young. He is like the new CEO, or he's the chairman of the board. He's the chairman, but he put like $100 million or something into GameStop, 80 million or something. And today it's worth $1 billion or more. At one point it was worth, 3 or 4 or 5 billion. And he has 9 million shares. And there's only supposed to be 75 million shares out there. But like they think that they've shorted it into like the billions, maybe, potentially.
Really?
Yeah. So everybody around the world, Wall Street Bets, this is so crazy, but it got compromised. So they basically had people that they paid like money to go in there and like take over and like crash it. And, like if you go to Wall Street Bets today and you type in like GME, like it won't get posted. They like censor that. And then everybody went to Wall Street Bets Elite. You can go and look up, and like everybody in GME sort of went there. And then like the other people stayed at Wall Street Bets that like weren't into GME anymore. And then after that, they went to this new sub called Super Stonk, and that's on Reddit. It has like 750,000 members, and that has just all of the due diligence, the research. These apes, they're from all around the world, and you have like 40,000 basically people looking at a stock, just writing information, and it really is like an intersection of finance and technology. And GameStop was supposed to go out of business. The sort of elites, the globalists, the people that control everything, GameStop was supposed to go out of business. But like I said, the market is the market, and they just had this awesome company that was being transformed just sitting there for $5 a share, and the market picked it up. And basically it's like a year later, and there's like the Department of Justice investigation is big, 40 firms. There's all this crazy stuff going on in Europe with UBS and Credit Suisse, and there was one guy that was linked to Epstein, like this freaking guy, and they were going to hold his pay. He was the CEO. There's a lot of crazy stuff out there that these like financial people do, and they really like shape the society that we live in. And they don't spend anything on, anything good. They don't care about the environment or the future or sustainability. And it's like, enough is enough. And what's going on right now is very similar to like the French Revolution or something, where they actually killed the royal family in Bastille. But you can't do that today, but you can go and buy GameStop, and you can look at that. And it's basically what these kids are saying is, I'm refusing to sell it ever. And these firms are going to have to go and buy back all of the shorts that they sold short, or it's fraud. Because if there's only supposed to be 75 million shares, how could you have, you have 500 million out that's fraud. You can go to whoever and say they made fake shares to this much. So right now, it's like pretty bad that the SEC hasn't done anything to help the GameStop people. Nobody got in trouble for turning off the buy button. The media is really controlled by a lot of hedge funds, and they basically put so much manipulation out all the time. They were telling us all year, sell GameStop all year, like Motley Fool, and now they've like taken them all offline. The FUD has stopped because the Department of Justice is coming in. So I do definitely think that, this war in Russia or whatever it is going to create a big market crash in the next week or two. I think that the big firms are trying to keep people in so that they can offload their stuff as long as possible until people really realize. Another thing you got to understand, Blake, is that like all of this money that the Fed spent, like that's ending soon. Like it's supposed to be in March of 2022 that they're going to start tapering. And the only thing really, in my opinion, keeping the market up so high is that the Fed has been spending. And it's like every single financial advisor you speak to, every single registered, that they charge you a % to hold your money, and no one is going to tell you to sell. No one in the industry, because that's how they get paid. They're brainwashed. That's what they do. And if we go into like a really, really, really big crash where just equities, stocks are down 80%, it's going to ruin a lot of people. It's going to be like a 2008, but much worse. And, a lot of people are speculating that like after 2008, we never got out of it. And they just spent crazy amounts of money to keep the market high.
Like propped it up.
And what they've done is destroyed price discovery. There's no real price discovery.
What's price discovery?
Price discovery is when you have a buyer and a seller, they get together and they do a price. So if I come here and I buy a tea, we have price discovery here. if you were to charge $1,000 for a tea, you would discover very fast that nobody's going to buy that.
Right.
So when the market today, for example, was supposed to drop because of the war with Putin and Ukraine, it was basically flat because the Fed is like, oh, we're just going to pump more liquidity into it. It's completely fake. We're 30 trillion in debt, and they won't even have a conversation with us about how they plan to pay it back. You know, minimum wage is still $7 an hour. So the country, you know, it's not looking too great right now because of these sort of people, but these apes they're all about social change, and they believe that if they buy GameStop and they hold it, you know, that it will squeeze and it will go up into like really, really, really high, crazy, mind-blowing numbers. And that's what I'm saying to people. With everything that we've been through, everything that we've dealt through as citizens, the debt that we have taken on, the $30 trillion in debt, you know, do it. You go out and you get a GME, and, you know, you got to look at Superstonk, and you got to understand what you're doing, because this is not financial advice. We're not giving advice right here. We're just talking about nonsense, right?
Yep.
But you know, it's $120 a share right now, and these people think that it could go to like 50 million or 20 million. And, you know, people didn't believe in Bitcoin 10 years ago. I'll tell you something. Bitcoin is what really started a lot of this. It was basically what we're in right now is a war between centralized finance and decentralized finance. And centralized finance is the central banks. It's the Fed. You know, nobody is allowed to check their books. They can print as much money as they want, and they want everybody to work for like $3,000, $4,000 a month, you know, a regular job, and struggle, and they print trillions. It's fucked up. It's fucked up, you know, and we live in a pretty dirty system, and it's getting increasingly hard to get ahead.
Is this all like a concerted effort to just widen that gap between the haves and the have-nots? Is this to push that, you know, more and more of the regular population are going to live under the poverty line, and then there will be the 1% is now going to be like the 0.5%, right? Is that what this is all about?
Yeah, I mean, it's you know, it's the 1%, they control the politicians, they start the wars, they control a lot of the markets, they get away with a lot of manipulation, they do a lot of banking overseas and in the Cayman Islands, and they don't pay taxes, and there's a lot of these billionaires, you know, that are just basically taking way too many resources at this point. When you look around, and, you know, I don't want to get like too social or anything. What was the question on it?
Is this a concerted effort to make the have-nots have less, and the haves have more, to widen that gap?
Yeah, it's you know, there's a lot of firms out there, because when you look at a company like Charles Schwab, that is still very much the Schwab family. And when you look at the company, you think, oh, this is a publicly traded company, but it really isn't. Like, they're such big owners of the shares, and they have such big influence over management and direction, that it's really their company. And basically, they, for example, they lie to the clients all the time. I mean, if there is a big crash coming, they can't have the clients sell because of the other business they're doing on the other side of the books. All of these major firms are long and short. And when COVID happened, they shorted a lot of these stocks. You know, AMC was another popular one, but that's no GME. And basically, like, a lot of retail went out and bought them, and now they hold the stocks. And, like, they never got out of their positions. But centralized finance has been around for 300 years. And now, when Bitcoin came along, like, nobody believed that Bitcoin was going to go to, like, 50 grand, 70 grand. If you walk around the street today and ask anybody, hey, if we went back 10 years and you could buy Bitcoin, would you? Every single person would say yes. That was an amazing cycle, what that did over 10 years. And what that brought was basically decentralized finance. So now, in the future, you know, you don't need to go to Bank of America. You can just use Bitcoin on a crypto thing. Like, there's a lot of other different ways where you don't have to rely on the fiat Federal Reserve currency that they've printed. So there's pressure there too, you know, that like in Ukraine today, a ton of people moved money out of the Russian banks, the Russians, to get at Putin. and they went and bought a ton of crypto. Crypto is up, 15% today, Bitcoin or something. There is so much crazy stuff going on. And then these firms, what they're doing with regards to the wealth gap, I'm not going to sit here and be like, every firm gets together and is like, let's, screw the 99%. But for example, real estate prices are so crazy, and these firms and these companies bought a lot of houses. You can go and Google it. Zillow bought a ton of houses. They were paying 100% over. It's happening in Canada. It's happening all around the world. You have people coming into like New York and buying houses that are not even American companies.
Yep.
And then they're building all of these like fancy apartments, and they want everybody to pay like $2,000 a month, and they're keeping these houses, and it's, you should not have that. You should not have houses are for families. Houses are for people. And this is the type of stuff that drives me nuts, is that we live in a society where it's absolutely okay. If you go and look at Blackstone and Apollo, these people buy tons of houses and then they've pushed the rent up. That's why the rent is so expensive. They're the same people that use the politicians to keep the minimum wage down. And they, these are the same people that let seniors get an increase on their social security, but there's no increase on minimum wage. Nobody can explain how we're going to pay back the $30 trillion in debt. And, it's a big freaking mess. So basically, GameStop is just sort of, in a way, it's like, when you look at the situation and what they've done, this is the opportunity for you to be like, okay, I'll do $120. I'll get one. And what is that really?
Yeah.
It's not a lot of money.
No, you blow that on a night out with friends.
Not even. That's just gas and some food, right?
Yep.
Some chips and stuff. So it's huge, and it's, what you got to understand is that, like, throughout history, there has been a lot of crazy changes and a lot of crazy business. The really exciting thing about GameStop is that, like, Ryan Cohen completely turned the company around. They don't really have any debt.
Sorry, we got a kennel downstairs.
This company has 4,000 stores. They're all the way around the world, and they're building this crazy NFT exchange. It's really going to be the future.
I've heard about that. There's an NFT marketplace that they've started.
Yeah.
And NFTs are just booming right now.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's making an NFT, which is something that's like hard for me to wrap my mind around about what actually an NFT is. Is it, because I guess in order for it to have, like, the end game is like you buy an NFT for, $10,000 and then you put it on your wall in virtual reality. Is that it? Or is it like a savings? I'm out. I'll bool out with the tea.
It's a good question.
Is it like an investment? Who's to say that it's going to be worth anything in 5 years?
So basically, when we go back and we look at like centralized finance versus decentralized finance, centralized finance is like Bank of America, but something like Bitcoin is decentralized because there'll be like 10 computers to verify the transaction, right? Like, Waze?
Yeah.
Waze,
the map app.
Yeah, Waze when you're driving. In my opinion, that's like the first blockchain that I ever really used. Because, like, I would drive past a cop. It would be like, is there a cop there? Is he still there? I'd say yes. And then someone else would go by. They'd be like, yes. Someone else would go by. They go, yes. And then once people start going by and they're like, no, 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 the app knows that the cop is gone. And that's the first example of blockchain
Interesting.
that I really think, right?
Okay.
You see that?
That
Because
makes
there's
sense.
different people verifying that the cop is there, And if one guy lies or hits the wrong button, it doesn't matter because you're going to have 10 other guys come through and be yes, 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 yes. So that's an example of blockchain technology. And now, a lot of these big firms, they don't do anything. Like JP Morgan doesn't do anything. They're just intermediaries. They're middlemen. They were just there first and they have the system and they're freaking out. They're freaking out, And Bitcoin is just a perfect example. I mean, that was the best investment ever. Anybody that bought that low is rich and doesn't have to worry. And, they told people not to buy it for years and years and years. And we don't trust it. We don't trust it. And now they told everybody to buy it when it went to like 70,000. You go and look at like CNBC. You go and look at like mainstream media. It's like these globalists were like selling it back to boomers that like thought they missed it. And now, the markets have started the year pretty bad. Crypto was up big today. Like, I guess like a lot of people are taking their money out of Russian banks and buying Bitcoin, which is good. There's a lot of volatility and I could see like Bitcoin and crypto going a lot lower, but it will definitely recover. But if the Fed just keeps printing trillions and trillions of dollars, it's like the US dollar is not going to be worth jack, it really isn't. And people just don't, want to admit that. But if you don't know the answer, if you don't know what to do, the apes are great people.
The apes. Can you explain the apes? I've heard you use that phrase a couple times.
The apes is sort of the name that you give to these people, because on Wall Street you have bulls and bears. A bull market is a market that's going up because a bull strikes up with its horns. A bear strikes down with its paws. So a bear market is a market where it's down, and then now you have apes, and apes, they just hold. So all of these GameStop people have done for like the last year or more is just bought shares all around the world. And there's like in Germany, like everywhere you go, Australia. And it gets like even a little bit more like funky, but it's just, if I gave you like the 2-minute overview on GameStop, it's just like, it is basically I got to take a step back. The centralized system, for example, is something like if you wanted to write a book right now, you would have to go to Amazon and you would have to listen to their publishers. And if they didn't like you, they could just say no, and you can't get your goddamn book out there. And GameStop, if you go to the website and you look at it, it's all about power to the creators, power to the players. And Ryan Cohen is creating this NFT exchange where if somebody was an author, you're just going to go there. It's going to look like the iTunes store, maybe. I don't know yet. And then, this is just speculation because they haven't revealed their plans. But then you just have your books there. And somebody could come and just buy your book directly from you. And GameStop is going to get a little piece of the transaction. And then they get that book on the blockchain. It's there forever. So if DraftKings wanted to do gambling, and it's like, I bet you on an app, at the end of the game, the blockchain can go to the thing and be like, okay, this team won, Blake bet this, he gets those tokens, and you get paid. And you don't have to wait for a bookie or a human. And they can actually go to GameStop and say to GameStop, hey, we want to do this, can you help us? So GameStop is teaming up with all of these different companies, Samsung, all this stuff, and the whole Metaverse and the W3 is going to get crazy. But again, if I want to make a song, I have to go to iTunes and I have to go through them. If I want to produce an app, I have to give the Apple Store 30%. Now you're just going to do your app on the NFT. You're going to go to the blockchain. So GameStop is essentially building a public exchange, and going forward, they're going to be one of the biggest players in the space. And Amazon is big with AWS, for example, but they ship toothbrushes. It's like, that is old technology. Facebook is suffering. Nobody wants to use Facebook anymore. It's not, I know you use it for this and that. I'm talking like big tech. It's not where you want to be right now. It's the same with Google. It's just a search engine. You have to recognize we're at the end of that cycle. And the next cycle is about decentralized finance. And it is a little bit of a war right now with the legacy sort of people that control it and the new people coming up on the block. But GameStop is about power to the creators. You're going to go there and you're going to say, you know what? I made an app. I'm going to upload it there. And then GameStop will get a little fee every time you sell it. And if someone buys it from you, they own it forever. And that's the future. And it's going to be like really, really exciting. That business is going to be worth billions, that NFT exchange that GameStop is building. And a lot of crazy things. I mean, I'm not much of a gamer, but you find a sword in a game. This is theories. And you don't use the sword, you don't use the rifle. You go to the NFT exchange, you can sell it to another user. You can actually make money going around picking up like medical supplies in Call of Duty, and you could sell them to like other users, and you can like make money playing video games. And it's like billions of people do it.
Have you seen Ready Player One, the movie?
They talk about it a lot, but I haven't watched it.
Yeah, it's in a dystopian future, not so distant future, where the society is very poor. They live in like trailers stacked on top of each other, and people have migrated to this metaverse, to this virtual reality world where they can live their life however they want to. They can decorate their character however they want to, and it was painted out as like a fictional movie, but it seems like that's where we're headed. That a lot of our life is going to be lived in this virtual space. And I don't know, it's a little alarming, right? But it's something that we're going to have to adopt or get left behind, right?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like, you know, Manchester United or Manchester City is building a virtual stadium. And I think that you're just going to put the goggles on and you'll be at home, but then you'll just be at the stadium. So that would be absolutely amazing technology, in my opinion. If I could put on the goggles and I'm at the Lakers game and it's live and you see, and that would be amazing, right? Everybody would be down with that. But I'm not going to like wake up and go and necessarily live in the metaverse, you know?
Yeah.
But there's huge potential there. And it's just, the metaverse is just a little part of it. But NFT, you know, because we're talking about so many things, NFT is non-fungible token. It's like it's basically proof of work, proof of whatever that you did it. So
Like a deed.
Yeah, I mean that's the future, man. Like if you buy a house, you have to buy an attorney to go and look up records. You have to deal with all of this stuff. And in the future, maybe you buy the house, you go to the GameStop exchange, it's there, it's a coin, it's a token. You buy it off that user and they transfer it to you. It's all electronic and it's all stored and backed up on the blockchain at GameStop. Now, here's the thing. The Google, the Amazon, the Facebook, they had total control. They had total control. If you wanted social media, you needed Facebook. If you wanted an app, you needed Apple. If you wanted, you know, you can't buy anything cheaper than Amazon. Let's say, you know, I'm not getting into that because I know some things are expensive on Amazon, a lot of things. But, you know, they had total control and they liked that. So these companies never really looked at blockchain. GameStop is the first company to go out there and look at it. And the idea is that like when this market crashes, there is going to be a huge margin call for GME. And the apes, they don't have to sell. They don't have to sell. So if these big companies go out of business that were shorting it because the market drops and they have to close their shorts, basically they're not going to be able to afford it. They sold so much GME, it's literally all over the world. And there's nothing they can do because it's like they have investors all over the world. Even if they were like, we're going to screw the American people, they're going to have to deal with like 200 different countries. So apes are like all around the world. And it's just like one of the like craziest things. And just the GameStop apes are like, a lot of them play video games, obviously. And they were like, we're not going to let you destroy our company. Like we went here as kids. Yeah. And they like saved a company. It has like 20,000 jobs. And if you look at the media, like they hate these kids, and this is the whole point of the stock market. The whole point of the stock market is to go and buy a stock and hold it, and it goes up, and they're being victimized for it. You know?
It's unbelievable. I know that I don't want to be on the I don't want to be sitting and wishing that I had a GameStop, you know. So I definitely got in the game, so to speak. But it's all still very Greek to me. And some people say that the GameStop train has seen its day. When some people say, I went up to 400. It's, you know, that's it. You totally disagree with that.
Yeah, I mean, there is a SEC report that basically proves that they didn't close. If you go back and look at the short interest before it happened online, it was reported at like 200% or something, 226 or something. So like if there was supposed to be, you know, 100% of shares, there were 226, right? That's all over Supersong. That's all over online. Like people took screenshots of that thing. So then after they turned off the buy button, they basically like did some shady things where they can like, they do a lot of different things with derivatives. They buy a lot of different options, and they can basically do these things called married puts, where it's like, oh, you own this contract, so that's technically a share, even though it really isn't. And they really like come up with like a lot of creative, crazy things, you know. And yeah, it's just what were we talking about?
GameStop and not wanting to be, has GameStop seen its day, or is it going to go to $100 million a share?
Yeah. So basically the SEC report says that they never closed. The SEC report says that. You can go and look it up. If you go and search Google for Gary Gensler's SEC report, and they never explained how the short interest went down. But even if they did cover, you still have an amazing stock that could easily go to $1,000. I mean, this
Yeah.
is going to be a huge tech company with the NFT exchange. They're really going to change a lot of things. They have 4,000 stores. They have like little to no debt. Like, it's a really, really popular global brand now. And like Ryan Cohen hired 400 people from like Amazon, Chewy. Just, you got to get on Superstonk. It's the best financial information.
And
You
that's
know,
on Reddit. You get the Reddit app.
yeah,
And then when you're in Reddit, you search Superstonk, Superstonk.
yeah.
And that's a sub thread. And you can read up on all of this information.
Yeah, yeah, and there's so much research in there, and there's a lot of memes, and the apes are really, really great people. They like raised a lot of money for kids in hospitals, and when the first time it happened, they went around and emptied these GameStop stores. They bought all this stuff, took it to hospitals, gave it to kids. They do a lot. They like want to, give back to society and make the world a better place if they get this money, and I really know how markets work, and I do believe there's a ton of corruption. I think that the Department of Justice investigations and probes confirm that.
But does that stuff ever go anywhere? It's like, it's like it happens and they do all of these investigations, but it seems like sometimes they just fizzle out. Or you never hear anything about it again because maybe they get to a high enough level where they realize they're barking up a tree that, that they shouldn't be barking up. And then it just gets, swept under the rug. I guess that's definitely a fear when you're talking about these, higher level organizations that are all part of this, cabal that runs the world.
Yeah, I mean, there's not really anything they can do. It's just business. They sold shares that they didn't own, and then a bunch of investors bought them and are refusing to give them up. And it's not market manipulation. It's nothing. It's just no different than
These were for sale. They were for sale.
Yeah,
we bought them.
Exactly.
People bought them.
It's America.
Yeah.
It's not different than me getting with you and buying a tea off you.
Yeah.
And I have to buy it, and if I buy it and I don't want to drink it and I want to take it home and put it in my fridge for you, I have that right.
Right, but if I sold you an empty glass and said there was tea in it, and then you came to sell it back to me, and I'm like, well, there's no tea in there, you'd say, I don't give a fuck. You sold me something that you called tea.
Yeah.
Right? Something along those lines.
So Citadel came out with their like yearly numbers today, which is Citadel Securities, which is like one of the big market makers. The guy is like really, really short GameStop. And you'll see that if you go to Superstonk. But like they basically sold, I think, around $65 billion of fake shares last year, this guy. It's a privately owned company. He owns like 85% of it. He's a billionaire. And yeah, he sold $65 billion worth of fake shares. And right now they only have like $4 billion in real assets. Like the only people more leveraged than them, honestly, are the Fed. But like the Citadel Securities, if they go out of business, it's going to be a huge market crash, and then the squeeze will be on, and there's nothing really they can do about it. Some people think that the war in Russia is to basically somehow get a bigger story that they can sort of hide this and sweep it more under the rug because a lot of people might lose their accounts or their account values. And then there's another thing with just the insurance of these brokerage accounts is only up to like $250,000 per account.
So if there's a large squeeze that happens and they don't have the money to pay me, they'll say it's insured up to $250,000. That's what you get, even though you have $10 million worth of this stock.
That's like a theory if like the system collapses that you're capped out at 250. The reason I bring it up is more for like, an 80-year-old man that has $2 million in municipal bonds. He's been completely conservative his whole life, lived a good life, lived a fixed income, whatever. And then if like all of the firms went under, he could like lose those bonds, because when you open an account, you sign an agreement that says you only have like $250,000 insurance. And then the way to do that with GME is to move them to computer share. So you buy them on Fidelity or something, and then you basically move them to computer share. It's called DRS, direct register, and then they're in your name. But when you have them at the brokers, like most of the time they're in something called street name. So again, if somebody had $30 million of Home Depot stock that they owned for like 30 years and the system collapses in a month, they can lose all of that, even though they hold those shares. They're not really real, and it's called in street name. And most people have no idea, but you're really only insured up to $250,000 per account. Why is that? Because they came up with that, and they all did it, and everybody just agreed on it. But like if you give me $1 million as an institution or a bank, I don't like the word institution because there's nothing social about them really, and we don't want to use that word to describe these firms, these businesses. But yeah, I could talk all day, but to sort of like wrap it up a little bit, I do think that with everything we've been through, the way that the government treated us, we're $30 trillion in debt. I mean, we didn't get anything when COVID happened.
Who do we owe that $30 trillion to?
The United States is basically owes it to the bonds, the treasuries, a lot of different things. They have a lot of different things, but basically when they print treasury bonds and people buy them, we have to buy those bonds back in the future. Now, our debt is 30 trillion. It's a lot of different things, and I'm not like an expert on it.
Yep.
But, Apple at the highest and Amazon, these were like nearly 3 trillion. So like we would have to sell, Apple 10 times and take all of the earnings with no taxes just to cover the debt. It's not going to happen. And I just want to go on record and say that I was speaking about it, and it's crazy, crazy stuff. It's crazy, crazy stuff. So I like the GME story. It's a great freaking exciting thing, man.
Like almost a Robin Hood type story, not to be confused with the app, but like steal from the rich and give to the poor type deal here. Like
it's not even stealing though,
Oh, okay,
you don't
fair.
Because it's
fair.
The apes are always individual investors. It's not manipulation. It's not a group.
Yep.
But Jim Cramer goes on TV and he's like, buy this, sell that for years. Doesn't get in trouble. D-Value goes on the internet, gets popular, and then they basically like silence him because he can't get like sued or whatever. And it's just like the censorship is everywhere. You can't find Ryan Cohen on Twitter easily. Well,
that's what you were talking about. Google was like, and people are don't want to use Facebook anymore, and Google was in charge. But it seems like there's this shift happening where people are realizing that these large tech companies are these new like censored platforms where all of the information you get is tailored to you, or it's like, and it censors out shit that you shouldn't see. Like you telling people to Google these things, I would imagine some of them will be hard to find on Google.
Yeah, I mean, Super Stunk is pretty easy to find, but like,
have you heard of what is the app called? DuckDuckGo?
Yeah.
DuckDuckGo seems to be a more like an unfettered, uncensored search engine.
Yeah.
So if you guys have any trouble finding this stuff on Google, go to DuckDuckGo and you might have a better luck finding it. I think that people are starting to wake up, and they know something is, they've known for years. It's always a conspiracy theory that there's a elite cabal that runs the world and controls the media, but if you talk about that, you're like painted as this psycho conspiracy theorist. But it's really coming to fruition where people see these that we don't pull the strings, but somebody is definitely pulling the strings.
Look at the Epstein shit. I mean, he was a hedge fund manager. I mean, he was
great point.
These guys, they are the biggest donors. They hang out with the politicians all the time, and they're just the people that are the market makers. If they want to be a market maker, like, get me a share of GME. But like, they had huge bets on the other side. They were basically like taking both sides, and they shouldn't be doing that. If it's a utility sort of business, sure, take a cent every time you process a trade. But basically, there's something called payment for order flow, which if you go and look it up, it's crazy. But none of the tickets hit the exchange. So when you buy like Apple, it just goes to a hedge fund. They internalize it with someone else. They keep the spread, and like your bid never hits the exchange. As retail, we have like no power. It's like really, really unfair, and they have different lanes, and they have these things called dark pools where institutions can say, hey, we're going to buy this, or we're going to sell that. We're going to use the dark pool so that it will push the price up, or we're going to use the dark pool so that it won't affect the price when we're buying it. And they basically have different lanes that they can use.
So something like, I don't know if it's not MSNBC. There's a news station that covers stocks all the time. CNBC. So this is a news station that it looks like it's keeping you up to date on the state of the stock market so that you can make money, right? But to me, there's no way that they want you to make money, right? It almost seems like propaganda. to either misdirect you or make it feel like this is a legitimate market. But the information that's shared in there, where does it come from, and why is it that these financial systems that basically prop up our whole world economy are so emotional, right? One person says something, it can change the value of the stock. It seems like it's not real, right? It seems like stock markets are just like this. It's like air, which is it's alarming, especially when you know your family members have their entire retirement wrapped up in these stocks.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that, like, my argument is that these stocks really aren't worth anything if the Fed wasn't printing. And you won't hear that from anybody in the industry. You won't hear that on CNBC. And, like, when Melvin got into trouble in the baby squeeze, this is one of the hedge funds that they lost $6 billion. You go look up this guy, Gabe Plotkin, Melvin Capital. They advertised it on CNBC, and I was actually watching it, and it came up like Melvin have closed, and that was the moment I knew it was all fake. That was the moment I really was like, I need to like get as much GME as I can. I need to look into this, because I was like, why are they telling what this hedge fund is doing? And then if you go and look at the apes, you will see that like they bought up a lot of media, and it's, Apollo is a big private equity firm that basically does a lot of FUD. They bought Yahoo Finance right after the squeeze. And if you go to Yahoo Finance, you'll see like The Street, which is Jim Cramer. You'll see Market Watch, which is Citadel. You'll see like Reuters, Bloomberg, just all of these stories, and all of these groups were just talking trash on GME all year. So like maybe an old person bought it, didn't know, went and read the report, and then sold it. And like, it's market manipulation. They're manipulating the price of these securities, and they've been doing it for like a very long time. And now these articles are disappearing, and there's like a Department of Justice investigation. So they weren't ready for the internet, Blake. That's the biggest thing. They just were not ready for the internet. They used to have total control. You used to want to buy a stock, you have to call Morgan Stanley. Guy would charge you $2,000 to buy the stock, and that was the only way. And you were thankful to have a broker. It was a very, very different time, but today it's like a very different world. The millennials are very smart. There's a lot of different apes, but a lot of these guys are in their 30s, and girls are in their 30s, late 20s, and they're very smart. They're very smart, and they found something really, really good, and it's a great community, and that's why I wanted to talk about it. I think that if you have a few $100 and you don't really know what's up, go and get a Fidelity account, open up, buy a few GME, you DRS it to the computer share. You got to go to Superstunk and do your homework. You have to do your own research. I don't want you to listen to me because, I sound smart, or you think that I'm right. Do your own research, and if it makes sense, buy it. The whole market is overvalued, All of these companies are 100 billion, 200 billion, 50 billion, 70 billion. And GameStop is still only worth 9 billion. It's still small considering they have all of these stores and the growth, the new staff, everything they're doing. So, Ryan Cohen is probably going to turn this into like one of the biggest companies in the world. And the funds, the hedge funds, they control a lot of money for like a lot of really, really wealthy people around the world. And they're going to lose a lot of it. And this is what they do. These people, they go around and they destroy companies. They short these companies to zero. And if you can short a company that's worth 3 billion, you just made 3 billion, and you destroy all of the jobs. And then let's just make people buy more crap on Amazon, and it's just destroying the country, because you can't open up a store. You can't sell bikes if you want to sell a bike, because Amazon is going to get them so much cheaper, right? Because they're buying 100 million bikes.
Yeah, I see it here in store here. People ask me, how much does this cost on Amazon for one of our products? And it's like, well, do you like hanging out here? Do you think, is this a cool place to hang out?
That's
like,
a stupid question.
Do you think it's okay that we have a small margin on it so that we can remain in business? And it's important. But the world has been trained that they can get it cheaper online, and it started off with the Walmarts of the world, right? Walmart would show up in a small town right off the highway, and it would destroy the whole downtown Main Street where there was a locksmith and an eyeglass place. And then you could get it all cheaper in Walmart, sourced from China, right? And all of us, the lines at Walmart are, 30 minutes you wait in line to buy cheap shit from China.
Yeah, and, that they pay their employees nothing, and their employees get food stamps. So, like, the people that own Walmart are some of the richest families in the world, the Waltons, and they don't pay a living wage. And then their people get food stamps from us.
Yeah,
and then
our
they
tax
spend
dollars.
their food stamps at Walmart. So the system has a lot of issues, but there is a lot of change coming. And GameStop is exciting.
What's your thoughts on Elon Musk? There's a lot of these billionaires that are like not good for the world, right? Like the Bill Gates and the Elon or the Jeff Bezos. For me, it looks like Elon is doing good for our world. Am I reading that wrong? Do you feel like we're lucky to have this billionaire who's focused on innovation and making us a multiplanetary species and having, a worldwide internet and battery-powered cars? Or is that all a ruse?
No, I mean, Elon is I think he's like a brilliant man. I think he's had like an amazing life and he's achieved a lot. And I do think that Tesla is like one of the best things about him, that he sort of really got the whole green car movement going. And I think that like there's a lot more electric cars. And again, I don't want to get into if, we're burning fuels to charge the car. I think that what he did with the electric cars, I think he changed the industry. And you look at Europe and you look anywhere and they're all making electric now. And I think if we're driving around and we're putting less carbon into the atmosphere, that's great. I think that was like such a great thing he did. But, he did this thing the other day with Neuralink and he put some chip in these monkeys and they died. And like, I don't really like stuff like that, and I think that Elon is the Tesla thing was great, but he was pumping Bitcoin, then he was pumping Dodge. It's like, dude, you're a billionaire. Like, why are you burning people? People would listen to him, they would buy Dodge, he would sell. And he was basically pump Bitcoins.
Yeah, market manipulation with cryptocurrency. I've said it before that if it was regulated by the SEC, that would be like fraud, right?
Yeah, I mean, front running or like market manipulation, maybe. I mean, I don't want to say that, but I just think that he's done some good things, but I think that overall he's just maybe like really just in it for himself. He doesn't need to pump these coins, to make some money. But he did some really, really good things. And, if Elon goes up to this, if he fires one rocket, that's more carbon than you're going to use in your entire life, maybe.
So I'm looking up. I didn't hear about the Neuralink with the monkeys dying. I didn't know that. I've been kind of like following this whole Neuralink thing for a while and just think it's wild that we're going to be putting, a Bluetooth chip into our brain. And it seemed like everything that he was doing up to this point, all the animals were living. He has the pigs. He has the one macaque monkey that plays Pong with its brain. But it says here, Elon Musk's brain chip company, Neuralink, has admitted that the monkeys used as test subjects for implants died due to the experiments. And that was just February 18th.
Yeah.
On republicworld.com. Wow, that's terrible news.
Yeah, and it's, you could say, hey, he's going to make this so if somebody has cerebral palsy, you could put this in their brain and fix them. And,
right.
Yeah, it's worth killing 18 monkeys to get that technology where you could change thousands of lives of people with cerebral palsy or something. But, it's sad that just so much stuff out there, but it's whatever. I'm into Ryan Cohen. I think that he has a great business with GME. He doesn't have to worry about satellites or this or that. It's a little bit more simple. And if we have like a big market crash, kids are going to still play video games. But how much new money is going into rockets, for example? There's definitely money to be made out there in space, and like Elon has done absolutely amazing with the stock. He's done a great job with his stock.
Do you think that the pandemic had anything to do with manipulating markets? Some people think that the pandemic was planned for population control, or it was a way to crash the United States market. What do you think the correlation with this pandemic and the markets are?
It's wild, and you can get like very tinfoil hat here, but if you really look at it, they killed a ton of businesses when they shut down everybody. I mean, you had a gym,
yep,
you and Danielle, and you lost that.
That's correct.
And they call it the pandemic. There was a ton of wealth moved from small businesses to these billionaires. I mean, Bezos or Gates, all these guys made billions last year.
Target and Walmart were never forced to close.
Yeah, exactly. They let the big boys, and it's like, was it a hit on small America? And then you see all of this corruption, and it's just a crazy time that we live in, and um, the pandemic destroyed a lot of businesses. Definitely destroyed a lot of businesses.
Yeah, I mean, restaurants in California, like 70% of the restaurants are gone and will never come back. And they were like not allowed to do indoor dining or even outdoor dining for optics purposes, not because there was any science that was going to keep people safe from not eating outside. There was no proof of outdoor spread, but they wouldn't allow people to open their restaurants. There's stories about restaurants building, like spending $100,000 to build out their outdoor eating space, and then California said nope, nope, you can't eat outside. And it didn't feel like anything less than attack on small business.
Yeah, that's the one thing, is just like, if you start talking about the government saying you're essential, you're not essential. I think that was the term.
Yep.
It's messed up, and they just did not handle COVID well. It just makes you question. The U.S. government does not have this shit together. I mean, if we had a real emergency, something a lot worse than COVID, like a power grid going out, or like something crazy, I just don't think our government would be in good shape to take care of the people.
And you would think 200 and something years after the start of this republic we live in, that we would maybe have some shit more dialed in. But when shit goes haywire, it really kind of starts to show the fray in the wires.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough out there for everybody, every country, not just the US right now. But we're just at the end of this debt super cycle. Just they printed so much debt for years and years and years and years. And now like interest rates are going to go the other way after 40 years. And that's going to destroy a lot of the bond market. There's no way out. They had free money, they printed bonds for years, and now interest rates are going to go up, and when rates go up, those bonds go down. And there's like major issues. Like if you're a financial advisor and your portfolio gets 6% and inflation is 10%, you just lost 4% to inflation. What are you going to do? You can't do anything. And then if hyperinflation gets really, really bad and people can't afford food, the government can't just send you a check for $600, go and buy some food. They won't actually be able to afford to get you the food, even the government. If we go to like really, really bad hyperinflation, the only thing the Fed does is print more money. It's the only thing they ever do. It's the only thing they know how to do. They don't look after you if you don't have money or if you don't have assets. And if the Federal Reserve just flew over the city and just dropped out a bunch of hundreds, that would be way, way better for the economy than propping up the market. But again, with $30 trillion in debt, because once this market drops, a lot of these big firms are going out of business. And they really just don't have anything proprietary. They don't have anything special. And, the Fed, they all bought, all the insiders bought, J Powell, they all bought. And then right at the top the other day, they said, you guys can't buy anymore. So they're all allowed to dump their stocks right before the crash. And it's just all backed by the taxpayer. So it's all backed by the fact that we're going to pay back the 30 trillion in debt. And that's why they can ride it out. But the country just got looted. And like, we're not going to be able to pay that back. And then we're not going to be able to have a military, and like things are going to change potentially. But if GameStop blows up and these apes get the money, it's going to be the biggest redistribution of wealth in human history. And there's going to be a lot of investment. There's going to be a lot of change. There's going to be a lot of change in politics, and things are going to get better. And I'm like really, really like excited and positive, and I have like really, really good vibes. And I think there is a big battle out there between a lot of evil energy and a lot of good energy. And I think it's, going to change.
It's a wild time to be alive. I feel honored to be living through it. I feel glad to have a friend who's helping me kind of figure it out as it's going on. And I think this sit down today it was very informative. A lot of it is still, it's hard for me to completely wrap my mind around, but I think you've done a great job explaining kind of the state of things. And I think we should just say again, this is not financial advice. We are not in a position to give financial advice. We're just two morons talking about the things that we've learned and what works for us or is going to work for us.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody out there is different. I don't know how much money you have, what you do, what your plans are, how much risk you want to take. But, most people can do $100, $200 and get a share or two. But, you just got to wait. You just got to buy it and wait and see what happens. And hopefully something good will happen.
I'm with it, dude. Well, Spencer, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. This is fantastic,
This is a
man.
great call.
If people are interested in learning more about your philosophies and kind of what you have going on, can we direct them to your social media?
Yeah. Send me a DM,
What's your
on
social media?
the Brady Beats and the Token Girl.
Brady Beats and the Token Girl, which is also a side project with you and your wife, are DJs. You guys kill it. You've DJ'd here for us. So if you're looking for awesome coupled DJs,
House music.
yeah, house music, excellent.
vibes.
Yeah, all the good vibes. Check them out. Brady Beats and the Token Girl. Send him a DM. Check out Super Stonk. We'll put the link in the description. And just kind of read between the lines with everything you guys are seeing out there. There's a lot that's happening, and you want to be on the right side of history here, right?
Yeah. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity.
I love it. Spencer, thank you so much. This has been fantastic,
Thanks,
dude.
Blake.
You guys, thank you for joining us for this sit down today. If you like what you heard or you want to hear more, click subscribe, like, comment below about what you liked about this conversation. We appreciate you very much. We'll see you next time live from Hakuna. Boolah.
Lula.